What happens when the perfect facade begins to crack? Charles Bancroft, a millionaire revered for his flawless exterior, is on the brink of being unmasked. After cheating on his wife, hidden truths are set to unravel in shocking twists. What will be the consequences of his deceit? The charity gala gleamed with opulence, chandeliers casting shimmering light over a sea of well-dressed guests. But to Amelia, it felt like a stage concealing a tragedy. As she swirled her champagne glass, the faint sound of laughter faded into a distant echo, drowned out by the information stirring inside her. The moment she found the note nestled within the lapel of Charles's suit, her heart plummeted, a lurking doubt raising its ugly head. What could this cryptic note reveal about the man she thought she knew? She wondered, fingers trembling as the elegant atmosphere strained against her rising trepidation. She carefully unfolded the compact piece of paper, just enough to glimpse the scrawled phone number paired with the terse message, "Call me when you can." A chill cascaded down her spine, prickling her skin as the laughter around her faded into background noise. Amelia's thoughts spiraled through a bramble of betrayal and fear. The world around her continued its merry chatter, blissful ignorance in stark contrast to her turmoil. Each bubbly laugh and every cheerful toast only tore at her insides, amplifying the feeling that she was suffocating in a room full of air. What did this note mean? Who was waiting on the other end of that number? She caught Charles's eye across the room, surrounded by their wealthy acquaintances, his signature smile plastered on his face. It was a facade that had always felt so secure, but now it seemed as fragile as glass. She took a deep breath and steeled herself. The pressure of the moment loomed heavier than the dazzling chandelier above. With every step, the words she had rehearsed dwindled, leaving only a frantic whisper of determination. "Charles!" she called, her voice slicing through the ambient chatter. The room quieted as guests turned their heads, intrigued by the sudden shift in atmosphere. "We need to talk." There it was, the flicker of surprise in his eyes as if he'd been caught off guard while stealing candy. "Amelia, not here," he stammered, reaching out to grasp her arm. "Let's not disrupt the evening." His practiced charm crackled under the pressure, the anxiety beneath his smile radiating with undeniable intensity. "What's this?" she pressed, pulling the note from her clutch and thrusting it towards him. "What does it mean?" For a moment, silence swallowed the space between them, a charged air thickening like storm clouds. He glanced down at the note, and for an instant, she saw genuine panic flicker across his face before he masked it with a casual expression that couldn't quite hold. "It's nothing," he deflected, waving his hand dismissively. "Just business-related." The words felt like barbs, pricking through the thin skin of their relationship, which until now had seemed invulnerable. Amelia studied him, desperate to rekindle the connection they once had, roots that were once solid, growing warped and wind-scarred with every lie disguised as truth. Flashbacks flooded her mind, vibrant memories of laughter shared and secrets whispered, moments when their hearts beat as one. How had they drifted so far apart? The fragments of joy were now shrouded in shadows of doubt and mistrust, and the increasingly distant Charles felt like a stranger looming before her. "Amelia," he spoke, his voice losing its confident edge, "you're overreacting. We're here to enjoy the night." But Amelia refused to let his words shatter her resolve. The anger simmering within her transformed into determination. Amid laughter and elegance, betrayal lurked in the shadows, she thought. Just as she opened her mouth to press further, a sudden vibrancy glowed from the phone in his pocket. The screen lit up with a text, and he quickly glanced down. Something about the way his shoulders stiffened spoke volumes. A tightness gripped around his heart as if a vice were tightening, a dangerous tension threaded through the air, heavy and inexplicable. What implications did that text hold for both their futures? In that charged moment, Amelia knew the truth was waiting, just beneath the surface, heart pounding and ready to erupt, and she was ready to reclaim the narrative of her life, whether he was willing to cooperate or not. The atmosphere felt almost electric as Amelia stepped through the front door, the weight of her earlier confrontation with Charles lingering in every corner of their home. She could barely find her footing. Uncertainty blotted out any semblance of the cozy refuge it had once been. Every object, a framed photo, a piece of furniture, reminded her of the life they had built, now standing frail under the threat of their unraveling truths. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Amelia's voice trembled with a mixture of anger and desperation, echoing in the quiet space around them. Charles stood rigid, his jaw tightened, and from his stance, Amelia could sense his panic brewing just beneath his calm facade. "Amelia, these financial matters are purely work-related. You can't just jump to conclusions like this," he said. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. As she pulled the bank statements from her bag, her fingers shook slightly. Each line represented a choice he had made, a lie he had told, and with every shaky breath, they grew heavier in her hands. "How about this transaction?" She pointed at a bizarre amount transferred to a name she had never heard. "Or this property purchased under a different name? How do you explain this?" His eyes darted around the room as if he could find a way out through sheer will. "You know how volatile the market is right now. You're reading too much into this." In that moment, the more Charles spoke, the clearer it became to Amelia that this was not just about money. It was a psychological battlefield where emotion and greed collided, where the polished image of their enviable life began to evaporate into a haze of deceit. Inside, Charles's thoughts were a chaos of guilt and apprehension. Was this the end of everything? His empire, his marriage, his carefully crafted identity? He had woven such an elaborate tapestry of lies, but now each thread felt like a noose tightening around his throat. Memories of his own choices haunted him, flashes of wrong turns that led to this point. A life of excess weighed against the fragile trust of his wife. He felt like a cornered animal, restless and desperate, aware that any wrong move could lead to total disintegration. Amelia took a step closer, her heart thumping loudly in her ribcage. "This isn't just business, Charles," she pressed, her voice thick with a sense of betrayal that cut deep. "It's a betrayal against me, against everything we've built together." He flinched at her words, a crack now evident in the persona he had worn so carefully over the years. Guilt swirled in the pit of his stomach, revealing the truth that he had buried deep. He was losing not just Amelia, but everything he had ever known. "Amelia, I swear." But she cut him off, a newfound resolve simmering in her veins. "No more lies, Charles. I am done with your excuses. It's time to face the truth." She felt invigorated, a strange sort of power rising within her as she spoke. Just then, the sound of the front door creaked open, and Harold, Charles's business partner, stepped into the dimly lit room. Sensing the charged atmosphere, his eyes darted between them, intrigued. "What's going on here?" "Nothing for you to worry about, Harold," Charles snapped, his tone defensive. But Amelia felt a strange twist in her chest. This was her moment, and she would grasp it tightly. As she searched through the bank statements, intent on uncovering every hidden truth, her fingers brushed against something beneath the papers, a slip that sent cold dread down her spine. When she turned it over, her breath hitched. It was an account number she had never seen before. "What is this?" Amelia whispered, the realization flooding her as every heartbeat echoed loudly in her ears. This wasn't just about Charles' affairs. This was a sign that something far deeper and more dangerous lurked beneath the surface. As she processed the weight of what she had just discovered, the tension in the room thickened even further. Harold's gaze sharpened with curiosity, and for a brief moment, she caught a glimmer of an unspoken truth in his eyes, a web of danger and deceit that intertwined their lives far beyond mere financial misdeeds. Her determination solidified. In this tangled world filled with secrets, she would not remain a passive observer. Carrying the weight of the unspoken truths, Amelia steeled herself. The time for revelation was nearing, and she had to act before everything began to spiral beyond her grasp, the cliff of uncertainty close enough to touch. When a partner becomes a foe, what do you do? The question echoed in Harold's mind as he delved deeper into Charles's financial dealings. The glow of his computer screen illuminated his focused expression as he pieced together the evidence of nefarious transactions. What he uncovered was more than just infidelity. It was a web of corporate misconduct hidden beneath layers of wealth and deception. Each click of the mouse brought new revelations, tightening the noose around Charles's carefully constructed facade. A tense atmosphere enveloped the office when Harold finally decided it was time to confront Charles. He swallowed hard, knowing that this conversation would carry stakes he could hardly measure. He sought out Charles in his expansive office, stocked with images of success that now felt more like silent witnesses to betrayal. "Charles," he said, his voice steady yet trembling with urgency, "there are discrepancies in the financial reports that don't add up. I need you to explain this." The accusation hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension. Charles raised an eyebrow, his demeanor cool at first. "Harold, you worry too much. Numbers can be easily misinterpreted, especially with the amount of data we deal with. Are you sure you're not looking for problems where none exist?" But as Harold spoke, he could see Charles's composure beginning to waver. Watching the man he respected so much twist the truth ignited a fire in Harold. "This isn't just about numbers. There is embezzlement involved here, Charles. People are going to get hurt." Internal chaos swirled inside Charles's mind. Desperation clawed at him, a primal instinct to defend the life he had built. What else had been unearthed? What might the reckoning look like? Anxiety surged through him, fueling his rationalizations. It wasn't that he didn't care, just that the stakes had escalated beyond his control, intertwining the emotional with the financial repercussions. Embezzlement? His voice dripped with disbelief. "That's a serious accusation. You're letting your ambition cloud your judgment, Harold." But even as he spoke, he felt the ground shifting beneath him, a quiet dread settling in. Meanwhile, Amelia was beginning to connect the dots. She had always felt a lingering unease in her marriage, but now she saw Harold's pursuit of the truth and Charles's reckless infidelity as part of a much larger picture. Her heart raced, emotions unspooling, revealing the layers of despair and anger that she had kept tightly under wraps. Every piece of evidence flashing through her mind was a reflection of her own status, one that was seemingly fading as the tides shifted surreptitiously in their executive world. As she pieced together the fragments, a transformative clarity began to seep into her thoughts. This was no longer about her husband's failings, but about power dynamics, flipping like a coin. She was shifting from a passive observer to an active player in a game where stakes were high, and the players no longer cared about the consequences of their actions. She also harbored suspicions about Harold's newfound ambition. Was he seeking revenge, or something far more sinister? The empowerment that surged through her was both exhilarating and terrifying. As Harold listened to Charles, all the clues swirling in his mind began to take shape, revealing a tangled web of deception where betrayal thrived. He faltered for a moment, considering how this confrontation could change everything: friendship, business, morality. The tension built as Amelia embraced her role as the informant, a revelation sharpening her focus. She had to act before this house of cards came crumbling down, taking her with it. The realization washed over her like a wave. She was done being stuck in the shadows. As she took a breath, her resolve solidified. The pieces were in place, but the shocking truth remained shrouded. What would happen when it all came to light? The air vibrated with unanswered questions as she prepared to unveil the secrets lurking in the dark. The time would come when her quiet strength would make a grand declaration. For now, she could only wait. The tension in the boardroom crackled like static electricity as Amelia and Harold exchanged a quick glance, a shared understanding of the battle ahead. They had spent countless hours planning this moment, and now it was time to confront Charles. Amelia's heart raced, but she held herself steady, determined to unveil the truth that had been lurking in the shadows of their lives. Charles sat at the head of the long, polished table, his usual air of confidence faltering under the weight of scrutiny. The board members exchanged glances, unsure of what was to come. As the meeting began, Amelia took a deep breath, drawing strength from Harold's presence beside her. She was ready to expose the man behind the mask, the one who had shattered their lives with betrayal. Loyalty can be just a whisper away from betrayal in this world of cutthroat business, Harold began, his voice clear and assertive, capturing everyone's attention. Amelia noticed Charles's jaw tighten, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face, before he masked it with a forced smile. But the underlying tension in the room was palpable. The stakes had never been higher. As the discussions unfolded, it was evident that Charles was struggling to maintain composure, glancing frequently at Amelia, whose gaze never wavered. She set the stage, bringing forth subtle yet pointed questions that prodded at Charles's integrity, an undercurrent of challenge lacing her words. With each inquiry, she sensed the atmosphere shift, the tension mounting like a tempest threatening to break. Inside, Charles felt the ground shifting beneath him, despair twisted in his stomach as the faces around him blurred into a cacophony of judgment. Thoughts raged like a wildfire. How had it come to this? The man he had been, so proud and unyielding, now felt like a distant memory as flashes of anger and shame viscerally swept over him. Every glance from the board members felt like daggers, piercing through his carefully constructed facade. When the moment arrived, Amelia stood taller, her heart pounding as the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. She seized the moment, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Charles, I have something you need to see." A hush enveloped the room, and she produced the incriminating documents, the evidence of his deception that wrapped around her heart like a vice. The papers trembled in her hands, but she clenched her jaw, forcing herself to project confidence, despite the storm whirling inside. As she laid the documents on the table, the room remained still, charged with disbelief. The implications were staggering, a web of betrayal, not just emotional, but financial. The weight of the truth hung heavy in the air, palpable and suffocating, as she glanced at the expressions of disbelief spread across the faces of the board members. Amelia felt a surge of empowerment. This was the moment she had envisioned during her darkest hours. It wasn't just about Charles anymore. It was about claiming her narrative, reclaiming her worth. A fire ignited within her, illuminating the shadows of doubt that had long clouded her mind. But as Amelia's heart swelled with this newfound strength, Charles exploded. "You think this will end me? You don't understand the situation," he shouted, his voice echoing amidst the silence. Yet it rang hollow. Disconnected from any genuine remorse, his fury was a fragile mask, one that struggled to conceal the monster he had become. Amelia watched as the shock rippled through the audience, fracturing relationships that had once seemed unshakable. The faces of the board members morphed into expressions of uncertainty and disdain, a mirror to the irrevocable destruction of trust. In that moment, as Amelia stood defiantly, she realized the truth was more than just a weapon against Charles. It was the catalyst for her own transformation, a step toward her liberation from a life interwoven with deceit. The confrontation, however, hadn't reached its conclusion. The final act was yet to unfold, leaving the room trembling on the precipice of revelation. As Amelia sat at the dinner table surrounded by her closest friends, the warm glow of candles flickered gently, almost like a beacon guiding her toward a newfound clarity. The soft chatter and laughter enveloped her. Yet beneath it all, waves of emotion swirled within. Sometimes the strongest revelations come in the quietest moments, she thought, bringing her glass to her lips. While the wine tasted rich and vibrant, it could hardly compare to the intoxicating sense of rediscovery that washed over her in this gathering. Lily, sitting across from her, leaned in with an animated smile. "Amelia, I can't believe you're finally putting yourself first. Charles doesn't deserve your energy," she declared, her voice brimming with conviction. The resolve in her friend's words struck a chord, resonating deep within Amelia. It was true. This absurd entanglement had drained her. In the wake of betrayal, she had found a flicker of strength. "Yeah, you're better off," Clara chimed in, her eyes glinting with solidarity. "I remember when Jake cheated on me. I thought I was losing everything, but instead, I found myself." The supportive murmur of agreement surrounded Amelia, enveloping her in a cocoon of shared experiences. Amelia smiled, feeling the warmth of sisterhood. Each story shared that evening revealed not only the vulnerability of infidelity, but also the resilience that lay on the other side. Still, as she mingled with laughter, a darker current flowed through her thoughts. The acceptance of her separation from Charles was not just about liberation. It was tethered to a complex tapestry of loss and recovery. A part of her felt untethered, floating in the ambivalence of freedom mixed with grief. She replayed the confrontation with him in her mind, grappling with the echoes of what had been, a life she had built for them. The unsettling nature of what it meant to reclaim her narrative hit her hard, but she knew this journey was crucial for her restoration. "Amelia, how do you really feel about it all?" Lily's voice cut through her contemplation, drawing her back to the moment. The question hung in the air, weighty and profound. With a deep breath, Amelia ventured, "I feel lost, but also hopeful. I never thought I'd find my worth outside of what I had with Charles." She glanced around the table, witnessing the understanding in her friends' eyes. They were all navigating similar storms, and here, together, they could share their truths without judgment. "We're proud of you," Clara assured her, reaching out to squeeze Amelia's hand. "This is just the beginning." As the conversation meandered into deeper waters, its focus shifted to wealth, trust, and the societal perceptions of success. Amelia listened intently, her heart fluttering with conflicting emotions as snippets of the lives outside her bubble trickled in. Success, she realized, was entangled with betrayal in ways she had yet to grasp. Charles's world, once glamorous and alluring, now felt like a prison of expectations and illusions. Just as a sense of calm began to settle, the shrill sound of Amelia's phone sliced through the camaraderie. Startled, she glanced at the screen, her breath catching in her throat as dread washed over her. A number she knew all too well. The blood drained from her face, and her heart raced. "Amelia, is everything okay?" Lily asked, concern etching her features. I need to take this," Amelia stammered, already rising from the table, the convivial atmosphere suddenly heavy with tension. As she stepped away, her heart pounded in her chest, a reminder of how thin the line was between liberation and danger. A knot formed in her stomach as she answered, the familiar voice on the other end foreshadowing an unexpected potential threat tied to Charles's fallout. The laughter faded into whispers behind her, but her mind raced ahead, spiraling into the unknown. "Is this about Charles?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. What would this call bring? Fear and unease settled within her as she prepared for whatever revelation awaited on the other line, the night closing in around her like a tightening vice. As Amelia's phone rang, her heart raced with an urgency that made it hard to breathe. What could it be now, she thought, staring at the screen, knowing deep down that the call could only lead to more trouble. When she answered, the voice on the line delivered a series of blow after blow. Charles's business was crumbling, and his relationships with partners were deteriorating rapidly. Panic gripped her, and a cold sweat prickled at her brow. "Amelia, we're worried about how he'll react," the voice cautioned. A chill ran down her spine as she pictured Charles in that moment, bellicose, desperate, and volatile. Just when she thought the worst was behind her, the specter of retaliation loomed larger than ever. What if he lashes out? What if he comes for me? Familiar dread festered in her veins. Thoughts twirled in a storm of anxiety and determination. Each word she heard twisted like a knife in her gut. Yet, amid the chaos, a steely resolve began to form. "I have to protect myself," Amelia thought fiercely. "No one else will do it for me." As she paced her dimly lit living room, the shadows danced around her like specters taunting her new reality. She stopped, staring out the window into the darkening streets, her pulse echoing in her ears. "This is my story," she whispered under her breath, clenching her fists. The narrative was shifting, and she wouldn't allow Charles or anyone else to rewrite it. Meanwhile, Charles lurked in a shadowy corner of his penthouse, swallowed by guilt and paranoia. His reflection in the glass was a ghost of the man he once showed to the world. What had he done? The contrast of power and vulnerability gnawed at him. Every scream of failure echoed in his mind, shredding any sense of control he once had. "You're losing everything," he muttered to himself, each word heavy with despair. He could feel the walls closing in, and uncertainty wrapped around him like a vice. As he wrestled with his unraveling identity, a sharp knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. To his surprise, Harold stood on the other side, a face from his past, now aged with caution. "I need to talk," Harold said, stepping in as unease brewed around them. "What do you want?" Charles snapped, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. Harold hesitated, his eyes flickering with concern. "I think we both know things are about to get messy. Amelia's not the only one in danger. You need to think about who you trust." The words hung in the air, thick with unsaid implications. Suddenly, the power dynamic shifted ominously. The ally he once thought steadfast now seemed like a potential threat. And a dark pit formed in his stomach. Charles felt a wave of desperation wash over him. "You don't understand! I'm losing everything!" he shouted, vulnerability lacing his voice. The darkness surrounding him deepened as doubt crept in. What if he were not only losing business but himself in the process? While Charles wrestled with his crumbling identity, Harold began to distance himself, acutely aware of the brewing storm. In the glimmers of their past friendship, he sensed the changes, a gut feeling that their alliance might soon be a fatal weakness. "What's happening, Charles? I can't risk being collateral damage in this mess," Harold said sharply, attempting to cut through the tension. The subtle fracture in their bond shocked Charles, but a darker thought crept into his mind. Perhaps this chaos could forge new alliances, ones that could reclaim his power, but at what cost? As the weight of betrayal pressed heavily on both men, a lingering question loomed. What happens when the roles of victim and perpetrator blur and the ground beneath them shifts? As the clock ticked ominously, implications of revenge simmered in the air. Amelia was not the only one with stakes at play, and as their fates intertwined, dark alliances began to forge in the wake of betrayal, hinting at confrontations yet to come. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in the dimly lit room, Amelia felt the weight of impending confrontation. This was it. The air thickened with tension, each moment stretching out as the reality of her choices loomed heavy in her heart. Charles stood before her, his expression a mixture of desperation and determination. In the end, will love conquer all? Or will it be the final knife in the back? He asked, his voice shaky, yet fervent. The question hung in the air, potent and unresolved, magnifying the fragile space between them. "Charles, we can't go back," Amelia replied, her voice steady, though inside her heart raced. Memories flooded her thoughts, the shared laughter, the late nights filled with whispered dreams. But those moments felt like distant echoes now, overshadowed by the betrayal that had severed their bond. "Please, Amelia," he begged, stepping closer, vulnerability spilling from him like an open wound. "You have to understand. I was scared. Scared of losing you, scared of what I'd become without you. I thought I could keep both my life and my heart intact." He paused, his gaze searching hers for an understanding that wasn't there. "Remember when we were happy? When we were genuine?" A flicker of doubt crossed Amelia's mind, a flicker that felt dangerous. Could they really find their way back? Her heart pulled in two directions, a battlefield where love clashed against the scars left by deceit. True strength isn't the absence of fear, but the courage to face it, she whispered to herself, trying to anchor her resolve. Bolstered by her own thoughts, she met his gaze more fiercely. "What you did? It changed everything. I can't pretend that it didn't happen." Charles's expression crumpled slightly, pain shadowing his features. "I know," he said, his tone faltering, "but I'm willing to change. I want to fight for us. Just give me one more chance. One chance to prove that I can be the man you deserve." As his words hung between them, Amelia felt the sharp edges of her memories, each moment of hurt, colliding with the tenderness of what once was. She took a step back, wrestling with the tide of emotions that threatened to engulf her. Part of her wanted to reach out, to comfort him, but another part insisted she stand firm. "I don't want apologies anymore, Charles. I want truth. And right now, the only truth I see is that I need to reclaim my strength and independence without you." Silence enveloped them, thick and painful, as both grappling souls stared at one another, seeking an escape from the turmoil. Every unsaid word burned in the quiet, marking the fractures of their relationship. Here they stood, on the precipice of decision, where every breath felt like a reckoning. With a heavy heart, Amelia turned away, needing space to breathe, to think. But just as she took a step, a sudden realization washed over her. She could not remain shackled to the past. She would not allow herself to be defined by someone else's choices. The tension suddenly bristled, leaving Charles standing alone amidst a storm of emotions, desperate to hold onto something slipping away. He felt the walls closing in, the quiet desperation igniting a growing fear that he was losing her, possibly forever. And just as the gravity of their confrontation reached its peak, the scene faded abruptly to black. The sound of hurried footsteps cut through the silence, revealing a hush filled with the promise of new, unseen alliances. Harold stood at the center of a shadowed room, whispering to an unidentified figure, their intentions unclear, yet somber. The finality of the moment resonated, foreshadowing repercussions that could devastate them both. The repercussions of choices made in the frenzy of ambition and betrayal. What lay ahead was unknown, but the stakes were higher than ever. A wave of uncertainty swelled on the horizon, leaving viewers grappling with the consequences of affection turned bitter, and the chilling anticipation of what was to come next. Amelia stood at the crossroads, a fog of uncertainty swirling around her as she breathed in the crisp air of a new beginning. The betrayal had stung, but now she felt a flicker of determination light her path forward. What would you choose if you had to start over after a betrayal like hers? It was a question that echoed in her mind, urging her to ponder her next steps carefully. She had spent too long wrapped in the confines of her old life, tethered to Charles's influence and the shadows of their past. With each decision she made, she felt the weight of her choices, that this was a pivotal moment to reclaim her narrative. While the echoes of Charles's deceit still lingered, Amelia found strength she never knew she possessed. As she embraced her new path, she reflected on her own moments of transformation, those instances when pain had shaped her and taught her valuable lessons. It was in the quiet hours of the morning, when the world was still, that she realized the echoes of her past could guide her toward a brighter future. This was not just her journey. It was an opportunity for others to connect with their experiences, to recognize that change often comes at the cost of discomfort. Her journey teaches us that personal strength often emerges from our darkest moments. It became clear to Amelia that true independence could be the ultimate reward. With each stride she took, she shed layers of doubt alongside the remnants of betrayal, visualizing the possibilities ahead. But challenges still loomed, and the horizon held unknowns that sent a shiver down her spine. Then there was the apprentice Charles had spoken of, a young, ambitious individual eager to prove themselves. What might this new figure of influence bring? More chaos or a chance for redemption? This unfilled space in her life felt electric, stirring both excitement and trepidation within. She understood that in every relationship, every venture, lay a complexity, each interaction holding the potential for both growth and despair. As she pondered these possibilities, Amelia felt central to a larger story that entwined with her own. Remember, the line between ambition and folly is often blurred, making us question whether success is worth the cost of our values. The idea lingered in her thoughts like a haunting melody. It reinvigorated her spirit not just to survive, but to truly thrive, pushing her forward into a realm filled with opportunity and hope. With this newfound clarity and courage, Amelia decided to share her story with others. As the camera zoomed out, she beckoned the viewers to join her on this evolving journey. If you found value in this story of truth and triumph, hit the like button and subscribe for more gripping narratives that challenge our understanding of morality. Let's explore together the many shades of human experience. As the screen faded to black, she left them with a final thought. Thanks for sharing this journey with us. Stay courageous and keep exploring the depths of human stories. See you in the next video. The warmth of her closing remark enveloped her audience, creating a sense of unity and anticipation for what lay ahead. Amelia's journey of self-discovery, resilience, and growth continued, resonating long after the video finished playing.